What if the most hated girl on Euphoria is actually the one who wins in the end? Cassie Howard has become a meme, crying in bathrooms, spiraling over boys, waking up at 4 AM to curl her hair for a guy who barely looks at her. To most, she's a walking cautionary tale of desperate, outdated femininity. But what if we misunderstood her? While other characters on Euphoria weaponize beauty, reject femininity, or perform it with irony, Cassie doesn't play the game at all. She throws herself unironically into softness, romance, longing, into a version of womanhood so raw and embarrassing it makes us cringe. But why? This video isn't here to defend her choices. It's here to ask, why does Cassie's version of femininity provoke us so much? We'll explore modern femininity from TradWife's OnlyFans Feminism and the end of the GirlBoss to the cast of Euphoria's girls to understand a bigger question. In a world where femininity is curated, sold and mocked, what does it mean to really feel it? And what makes Cassie in all her mess actually the one girl in Euphoria to be different from all the others? Let's start with a claim that's sure to raise eyebrows. Cassie Howard might be the only character in Euphoria who doesn't treat femininity like a costume or a battleground. While others experiment with it, weaponize it, reject it, or parody it, Cassie dives in head first. She doesn't flinch, she doesn't wink, she doesn't try to have it both ways. She doesn't use femininity to impress men, make a statement, or subvert expectations. She simply lives it, openly, obsessively, and without irony. In a show where most characters wear femininity like an outfit to gain power or shield insecurity, Cassie's complete surrender to girlish romantic fantasy feels startling, reckless even. It's a paradox. Her longing for love leads her into humiliation, heartbreak, and obsession, but she never pretends it's anything else. There's no satire, no strategic detachment, just raw commitment to her own idea of womanhood. And in a world obsessed with curated strength, that kind of emotional exposure might be more radical than we think. Cassie isn't necessarily a role model. Her choices are often disastrous, but she's not lying to herself about what she wants. And in that honesty, however messy or painful, it's possible she touches something uncomfortably real about what femininity can be. To understand what Cassie represents and why her version of femininity makes so many viewers uncomfortable, we need to zoom out. Because this isn't just about Cassie, it's about femininity itself. How we perform it, how we punish it, and how we try to control what it should look like. What even is femininity? Is it an empowering force women can wield, a trap built by the patriarchy, or an identity one can freely create? Cultural theorists and philosophers have long debated this. Simone de Beauvoir famously argued that femininity is largely a myth imposed on women. One is not born, but rather becomes a woman, she wrote in The Second Sex in 1949, meaning society conditions females to act feminine. For Beauvoir, the truly feminine woman is a product of male expectations. Frivolous, infantile, submissive, and this ideal becomes a mechanism of control. Femininity in her view was never a natural trait, but a role designated to keep women subordinate. Decades later, Judith Butler expanded this idea in Gender Trouble in 1990, arguing that gender, and by extension femininity, is performative. Gender is not something that one is, it is something one does, an act, a doing rather than a being. In Butler's view, femininity is a set of stylized acts repeated over time that create the illusion of identity. This makes it both a social construct and a potential site of subversion. Bell Hooks offered a more inclusive take. While she acknowledged how femininity can be shaped by oppression, she argued that embracing traditionally female traits, makeup, emotion, nurturing, can be liberating, if done by choice. In Feminism is for Everybody, she insisted that feminism must welcome diverse expressions of gender so long as they don't reinforce domination. True empowerment for Hooks means allowing women to define femininity for themselves. Camille Paglia, ever the contrarian, takes it further. She celebrates femininity as a source of primal power. Old-school feminism, coveting social power, is blind to women's cosmic sexual power, she writes. Palia sees traditionally feminine glamour, seduction, and even passivity not as a weakness, but as a powerful tool women can wield. In her view, women's sexual energy, when embraced, is an ancient, almost mythic force. These four thinkers form a spectrum. Beauvoir sees femininity as a patriarchal prison. Butler sees it as performance, fluid, constructed, but reworkable. Hooke sees it as potentially empowering, so long as it's chosen freely. And Palia sees it as raw, instinctive power often undervalued by modern feminism. This psychological tug-of-war is crucial to keep in mind as we look at Euphoria. The show's female characters each embody different sides of this femininity debate. Some use it, some feel used by it, some try to abandon it, while Cassie embraces it so completely that she almost breaks. Today's culture sends wildly mixed signals about femininity. On social media and in subcultures, we see a bizarre collision of trends. The rise of ultra-traditional housewives, the empowerment of sex work entrepreneurs, the ironic return of the bimbo, and the fall of the corporate girlboss. Each represents a conflicting modern model of womanhood. Let's start with TradWives, online a niche movement of young women glorifying the 1950s housewife role. These TradWives devote themselves to domestic bliss, baking bread from scratch, keeping a spotless home, looking impeccably ladylike, and proudly submitting to a husband. On TikTok, TradWife influencers don aprons like it's a uniform and say things like, "We know when we put those aprons on, we mean business, and we are going to get cooking." One NPR piece describes the TradWife ideal as straight out of a 1950s sitcom. An eerily perfect stay-at-home wife with makeup on point and a life that's all fresh pies and clean laundry. Do they portray a dangerous notion of femininity? Well, the same NPR interview notes that while being a homemaker is a valid choice, TradWife influencers go further. Some discourage women from higher education or careers, implying one should just find a man who will take care of you. Critics call this message ahistorical. Real 1950s wives weren't sipping iced tea in couture all day, and point out it's largely a performance on social media. Nonetheless, the TradWife trend taps into a yearning for a clear, if constrained, feminine role. It frames femininity as comfort and safety, the promise that if you embrace being the perfect wife, a man and home will protect you. Whether that's empowering or regressive is hotly debated. Next up is OnlyFans and sex-positive feminism. In stark contrast, another trend defines feminine power as sexual autonomy and monetization. Platforms like OnlyFans, which is a subscription site where creators, often women, sell erotic content, I really don't know who I'm explaining this to, have been hailed by some as a feminist way to profit from one's own sexuality. The argument, women control their content, make good money, and bypass traditional gatekeepers or exploitative studios. There are viral success stories of women who became financially independent, for instance a single mom who lost her job but made millions on OnlyFans. This is liberal feminism's vision of empowerment. The woman uses her feminine assets to gain autonomy and cash. However, others see a trap in this, arguing OnlyFans just repackages the male gaze for profit. As one critic put it, the platform can make women into personalized sex toys for paying men. Notably, renowned feminist scholar Catherine McKinnon condemned OnlyFans as basically a pimp-facilitating niche pornography and mediated soft prostitution. The crux of the debate is this self-determined femininity, women freely doing sexual work on their own terms, or simply patriarchy with a new paint job, women still catering to men's desires, just getting a cut of the money. Even academic analyses conclude that the reality lies in between. OnlyFans may be minimally to moderately feminist in that it gives women some safety and income, but it hardly overturns the power dynamics at large. It's a new outlet for an old question. Is embracing one's sexual allure a path to liberation or just another cage? And then we come to TikTok Bimboism. Irony to the rescue. A recent TikTok-driven movement playfully reclaims the word bimbo. Young creators, often clad in hot pink with exaggerated Barbie aesthetics, call themselves bimbos but infuse the persona with a subversive twist. The bimbo-core trend is about embracing hyper-femininity as an act of resistance against a culture that deems girly things as weak. Where previous generations might mock the dumb blonde, these self-described bimbos say, yes, we love sparkles, makeup and being sexy, and that doesn't make us stupid. One op-ed explains that in a society where even women often say I'm not like other girls to seem cool, the bimbo movement says being like other girls, enjoying traditionally feminine stuff, is nothing to be ashamed of. TikTok bimbos intentionally play up the bubbly, sexualized female trope, but they pair it with inclusive, progressive attitudes. Many bimbo influencers stress kindness, LGBTQ+, allyship, and anti-capitalist sentiments. One of the best ones I've read said, "I had enough of my lesbian situationship, so I went into the woods in order to reconnect with God." In essence, it's a satire that circles back to sincerity. Femininity here becomes a self-created identity, a performance that knows it's a performance. By exaggerating the ultra-feminine bimbo core, adherents expose society's bias that feminine equals dumb. As one article put it, this trend proves femininity and intelligence can exist in the same sphere, echoing how Legally Blonde's Ellie Woods can be stylish and smart. In a way, the bimbo resurgence is both a critique of how femininity is devalued and a celebration of enjoying it on one's own terms. It's feminism with a wink and a hair flip. And lastly, the girl boss collapse. Not long ago, empowered femininity meant climbing the corporate ladder in stilettos. The early 2010s worshipped the hashtag GirlBoss, a woman who conquers business while looking fabulous. Coined in 2014 by entrepreneur Sophia Moroso, GirlBoss became synonymous with hustle culture feminism, the idea that women could shatter glass ceilings through sheer determination and lean-in style confidence. This was femininity rebranded as having it all: career, success, pastel power suits, and Instagrammable self-care routines. Yet within a few years, the narrative soured. Critics noted that girlboss feminism was pushing a near impossible template of success on women and was facile in assuming one woman's success fixes systematic sexism. It often ignored intersectionally, focusing mainly on privileged women, and glossed over the fact that being a CEO in lipstick is not the same as true gender equity. By the late 2010s, there was a backlash, the so-called girl boss is dead moment. Scandals like the downfall of female-led startups and the realization that representation at the top doesn't equal structural change led many to abandon the hashtag. In short, girlboss femininity had leaned so far into individual power that it left collective liberation behind. As one analysis quipped, hashtag girlboss was the millennial pink version of having it all, with a feminism light twist, and eventually women grew tired of the shallow empowerment aesthetics. The collapse of the girlboss ideal marks a broader disillusionment. Femininity as glossy boss babe ambition turned out to be another exhausting performance, not a sustainable identity. Taken together, these trends show how confusing the current landscape is. Women are told, be a perfect homemaker, it's fulfilling. And no, sell nudes online, that's empowerment. And actually, just joke about being a bimbo while secretly undermining the patriarchy, all while the ghost of the girl boss whispers,
work harder and stop complaining, empowerment equals productivity.
The common thread is choice. Each model claims to offer women a different route to feeling valued. Yet, each also comes with pitfalls. The TradWife might surrender economic freedom, the OnlyFans creator might still be objectified, the bimbo might still be dismissed by society at large, and the girl boss might burn out under unrealistic expectations. This weird modern world of femininity forms the backdrop against which we can examine Euphoria's characters. The show, steeped in contemporary youth culture, reflects these tensions. From characters who perform femininity for power to those who reject or parody it, Euphoria is essentially a microcosm of these debates. And at the center stands Cassie, embodying the paradox of sincere femininity in a performative age. Sam Levinson's Euphoria presents a cast of young women who each engage with femininity in distinct ways. Through their storylines, the show explores themes of appearance, sexuality, identity, and the influence of the male gaze, essentially bringing our theoretical debates to life in neon-lit high school hallways. Let's examine a few key characters, Maddy, Jules, and Kat, to see whether their femininity is self-determined or shaped by external pressures. Maddy Perez is East Highlands Queen Bee. Flawless outfits, perfect eyeliner, and an unapologetic attitude. On the surface, she seems to embody empowered femininity, but her glam is more than self-expression. It's a strategy, carefully honed through experience. Raised on childhood pageants, can I just say, why is this still a thing? I mean, I have a dark notion why it once was a thing. I mean, pageantry. But, this really shouldn't be a thing anymore. Anyway, back to Maddy. Her afternoons she spent watching wealthy clients at the nail salon where her mom worked. Here Maddy learned a sharp lesson. Beauty is leverage. The women with manicures and designer bags didn't toil, they were taken care of. From that she decided she wouldn't climb her way to success through work, she'd be desired and adored and protected. Maddy's femininity is hyper-curated. Her fashion is armor, her seduction a tool. She consciously molds herself into the bombshell archetype because she believes beauty and sexuality are her ticket out of mediocrity. There's autonomy in how she presents herself, she genuinely enjoys looking hot, but it's also shaped by economic reality. Maddy never had ambitions for school or a career. Her fantasy life has always depended on male validation. Her relationship with Nate is central to this. It isn't just love, it's a lifestyle. She plays the role of the ideal girlfriend, tolerating his control and abuse because he fits her fantasy of luxury and protection. She even jokes about wanting to do nothing and to be taken care of. But when Nate betrays her, that fantasy shatters. The power she built through beauty can't shield her from heartbreak. Maddy performs femininity to gain control, but it also entraps her. She's using the tools she's been handed in a world that objectifies women, objectifying herself on her own terms. But the cost is steep. By the end of season 2, she starts to question whether it was all worth it. In the end, Maddy shows us femininity as both a weapon and a cage. She performs it with skill and awareness, but under the glam, she's still vulnerable to the very forces she thought she'd mastered. Jules Vaughn's journey offers one of the clearest explorations of femininity as performance. When we first meet her, she embraces a hyper-feminine aesthetic. Pastel clothes, long hair, delicate mannerisms, a manic pixie dream girl. The manic pixie dream girl is a term coined by film critic Nathan Rabin in 2007 to describe a certain stock character in movies, typically a whimsical, eccentric, emotionally radiant young woman whose sole purpose is to awaken the male protagonist to life's deeper joy. Think Natalie Portman in Garden State or Zooey Deschanel in 500 Days of Summer. She's not written as a full person, but as a fantasy, a muse to fix or inspire a man. Over time, the trope has been criticized for flattening women into quirky accessoires rather than complex individuals. In Euphoria, Jules initially risks falling into this role in Rue's life. Angelic, mysterious, emotionally volatile. But for Jules, being seen as desirable by men validates her identity as a woman. Her early style is genuine, but also deeply influenced by the male gaze. She idolizes romance, seeks out dangerous encounters with older men, and admits that her idea of womanhood was shaped by what she thought men wanted. She later reflects that she framed her entire womanhood around men. This realization that her femininity was reactive and externally constructed becomes a turning point. In the therapy-focused special episode, Jules begins deconstructing this identity. She admits that much of her persona was built from a million pieces from other people. She decides to pause hormone therapy, not to reject being a woman, but to explore who she is outside the hyper-feminine mold. She even considers letting some masculine traits return, an intentional rejection of the perfect girl script. Jules begins crafting a new vision of femininity, one that's fluid, elemental, and internally defined. She compares it to the ocean, beautiful, powerful, and ever-shifting. It's a striking metaphor for a kind of womanhood that isn't about compliance or appearance, but emotional depth and self-trust. By season 2, Jules is no longer performing for the male gaze. She cuts her hair shorter, dresses more androgynously, and reorients her relationship with Rue around mutual understanding, not fantasy. Her arc becomes one of self-reflection and reconstruction, from external validation to internal authenticity. Jules' evolution directly reflects Judith Butler's theory of gender as a performance. Jules' journey is thoughtful, raw, and deeply self-aware. She begins by copying femininity as it's sold to her: softness, seduction, validation through the male gaze. Then she deconstructs it, piece by piece, trying to figure out what's hers and what's just residue from other people's desires. But even as she pushes forward authentically, her relationship with femininity remains in flux, always questioned, always intellectualized. For Jules, femininity is something to decode and redefine. It's a concept to grapple with, not a state she ever fully settles into. Kat Hernandez starts Euphoria as the overlooked girl, smart, insecure, plus size, and largely invisible in the social hierarchy. She doesn't fit the beauty ideal, and for a while she doesn't even try. But everything changes after a sex tape of her leaks online, and instead of shame, she's met with unexpected validation. People desire her. Suddenly, she sees an opportunity. If the world won't give her power, she'll take it by performing it. Kat reinvents herself. She dons tight outfits, latex harnesses, and becomes Kitty Queen, a cam girl who dominates men for money. She flips the script, using the same tools that once humiliated her to build a new identity. Her hypersexual persona becomes both armor and rebellion, a way to control how she's seen and for once to be seen at all. At first, this transformation looks like liberation. She gains confidence, mystery, and status, but cracks quickly show. Behind closed doors, Kat struggles to believe the persona she's projecting. Her dominance is skin deep, a power fantasy that never quite reaches the core. In season 4, that internal conflict boils over. Though she's in a loving relationship with Ethan, she feels unworthy. Her mask of empowerment doesn't match her private self-loathing. This dissonance explodes in a surreal scene. Kat imagines a crowd of influencer archetypes urging her to love herself, but their glossy affirmations feel fake, like Instagram therapy pasted over real pain. She snaps. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I fucking hate myself. It's a brutal reminder that aesthetic empowerment can't heal emotional wounds. By the end of her arc, Kat isn't empowered. She's exhausted. Her attempt to reclaim femininity through performance collapses under the weight of inauthenticity. Unlike Maddy, who wields glam as strategy, Kat is trying to become someone she doesn't yet believe she is. And when that fantasy breaks, there's nothing solid underneath. Kat's story shows us a hard truth. Performance can't replace healing. Femininity as power is seductive, especially when you've been denied it. But if it's not grounded in self-acceptance, it's just another costume. And when the applause fades, the mask falls with it. Cassie Howard is a character defined by longing. She doesn't approach femininity as a tactic or a trend. She treats it like destiny. Her dream is simple and painfully sincere: to be adored, to be chosen, to become the perfect girlfriend, wife, or mother, to live the fantasy. And that's what sets her apart. While other girls in Euphoria perform femininity for power or protection, Cassie surrenders to it. She doesn't strategize, she believes fully. Her commitment is so extreme it becomes embarrassing, even tragic, but it's real. And in a world where every other girl wears her femininity like a mask, Cassie is the only one who takes hers off and says, "This is who I am, love me for it or don't." There's a twisted kind of autonomy in that. From the beginning, Cassie is primed for romantic dependency. Her father adored her, then abandoned her. Her mother is erratic, unstable. As a young girl, Cassie was praised for her looks and then repeatedly left by the men who once made her feel special. That's how she learns the equation beauty equals love and love equals safety. Her entire sense of worth becomes hitched to being wanted. She isn't unaware of this dynamic, she just can't stop needing it. In season 1, we watch her contort herself to please McKay. She molds to his preferences, even when they hurt her. When he degrades her, calls her a slut, she doesn't fight back. She just cries. When she discovers that she's pregnant, her first instinct is to fantasize that maybe, just maybe, this will make him stay. "I just want to dream about it for a minute," she says. That line cuts to the core of who Cassie is. She knows it's a fantasy, she just wants it anyway. By season 2, she falls for Nate, the worst possible man for someone like her, and goes all in. She betrays her best friend, she wakes up at 4 a.m. to curl her hair, applies meticulous makeup, changes her wardrobe to match what Nate might like. One day it's provocative, the next it's sweet gingham dresses. She doesn't do any of this for clout. She does it because she genuinely believes, if I can just be perfect, I'll be loved. That's what makes it tragic and sincere. We watch Cassie slowly unravel under the weight of this fantasy. Her emotions are volcanic, vomiting from guilt, sobbing in the bathroom, publicly losing it during Lexi's play. Her breakdown isn't subtle, it's operatic. But unlike the others, Cassie doesn't hide it. She doesn't deflect or disassociate or put on a cool front. She lets the whole world see her collapse. And in Euphoria, that kind of emotional exposure is rare. So no, Cassie doesn't win in any traditional sense. She loses her friends, Nate leaves her, she ends up sobbing on the stage, but in another way, she does win. Because she's the only one who goes all the way. She chases the feminine ideal to its breaking point and in doing so reveals what it really costs. While Maddy performs confidence but keeps her heart guarded, while Kat puts on empowerment but struggles to believe it, while Jules dissects femininity and eventually steps out of it, Cassie commits fully. She becomes the ideal she was taught to want, beautiful, accommodating, devoted. And when the ideal fails her, she doesn't adapt or pretend, it destroys her. And in that destruction, there's truth. She felt it all, she didn't fake it, she didn't hedge her bets. She lived it. Cassie, more than any other character, embodies the emotional core of femininity as it's often portrayed: vulnerability, longing, devotion, and the pain that comes with it. She's not a role model, but she's not a liar either. Her story makes us confront a discomforting truth. We are quicker to pity Rue for being addicted to drugs than Cassie for being addicted to love. But both are born from trauma, and both deserve empathy. Critics may say Cassie is brainwashed by the patriarchy, and they'd be right. But Cassie isn't sleepwalking. She chooses this path with eyes wide open. She knows the feminine script is flawed. She follows it anyway. That's not empowerment, but it's a form of agency, and it's more honest than most. Her meltdowns, her rage, her desperation, they all shatter the idea that feminine women are quiet or composed. Cassie becomes unhinged, even animalistic. In doing so, she breaks the stereotype. She's not a good girl, she's not a submissive doll, she's just a human in pain, clinging to a dream that never loved her back. And maybe that's the point. Cassie doesn't win love, she doesn't win friendship, but she does win clarity. She shows us what it looks like to feel deeply in a world that rewards detachment, to love foolishly, to want something so badly it breaks you. That might not be glamorous, but it's real. Because for Cassie, femininity was never a game. It was a belief and a system, and she followed it to the end. And that's why, in this strange emotional sense, she won. She reminds us of something culture often mocks or forgets. Feeling isn't failure. Feeling is the whole point. Cassie Howard's story is a tragedy, but it's also a testament to emotional honesty. In Euphoria, the characters who posture or perform tend to keep more dignity, but they often lie to themselves in the process. Cassie, by contrast, refuses or fails to lie to herself about what she wants. She wants to be loved, openly and completely. She's not pretending to be aloof or pretending to be empowered while secretly yearning for affection. She admits through her actions and breakdowns that she's utterly dependent on love. This makes her weak in a conventional sense, and the show doesn't sugarcoat the consequences. Yet, culturally, there's value in looking at Cassie with compassion and nuance. We live in a time that often mocks pygmy girls or boy-crazy teens, dismissing them as anti-feminist or embarrassing. Cassie forces us to ask why such girls exist and feel the way they do. Cassie's femininity is a double-edged sword. It is at once her greatest vulnerability and, strangely, her form of self-determination. She determined that being feminine in the traditional emotional way is her identity, and she pursued it to the end. While other characters use femininity as a mask, like Maddy's armor, Kat's alter ego, or a conquest, as Jules calls it, Cassie made it her inner truth. In doing so, she exposed how society often ridicules or exploits girls like her. We as an audience cringe when Cassie lowers herself for Nate, but we should also question why the image of a girl earnestly wanting love provokes such scorn. Perhaps it's because it hits close to home. It is uncomfortable to witness someone embodying needs and insecurities we are taught to hide. Cassie is like a mirror, reflecting the parts of feminine socialization many try to reject. The desire to be chosen, the impulse to nurture, even when not nurtured, the impulse to give and give, hoping it will be returned. We're uneasy because Cassie's approach feels like a regression to old values that feminism tried to move past. But ignoring that many women and men still feel those things only drives them underground. Cassie brings it to the surface, demanding we look. In the end, even feeling desperately and too much, is not failure. Cassie's feelings led her astray because they were tied to a flawed man and an outdated script, yes. But the fact that she allowed herself to feel so much is, in a way, a form of courage in the context of the show. By contrast, characters like Nate and many of the men bottle up feelings and turn them into violence and cruelty. Characters like Maddy feel hurt but hide it under vengeance. Kat feels self-loathing but hides it under attitude. Cassie just feels. And that raw emotional openness is a traditionally feminine trait that our culture often disdains. We label women who cry and want love as pathetic, but often celebrate men who rage or isolate as cool anti-heroes. Cassie flips that. Her emotionality is on full display, confronting us with the idea that maybe the problem is not that Cassie feels, but that the world around her doesn't know how to handle or reciprocate those feelings. To be clear, this isn't a blanket defense of everything Cassie does. It's a partial defense of why she is the way she is, and an argument that there is authenticity, even a shred of twisted empowerment, in her unabashed embrace of ultra-femininity. In the thematic sense we've explored, Cassie lays bare the conversation about femininity. She proves Beauvoir's warnings. She becomes the submissive woman and suffers for it, yet also oddly validates Palia's idea that there's a primal force in women's sexuality and emotion. She is both victim and agent. And crucially, she doesn't compartmentalize her feminine self. She is the same person privately and publicly, until it all blows up. In a show about secrets and dual lives, Rue's addiction, Jules' two personas, Nate's violence versus charm, Kat's online life, Cassie is almost refreshingly one-noted. What you see is what you get. The final note is one of empathy and learning. We as viewers can learn from Cassie's mistakes. Clearly, hinging all your worth on someone else's love is not healthy. But perhaps we can also learn from Cassie's authenticity. There is strength in acknowledging one's desires and feelings, even the uncool ones. If Cassie could step outside her story, one would want to tell her, love yourself first. You are enough without a man. You don't have to perform to be worthy. These are all lessons she hasn't absorbed yet. But by watching her saga, maybe other young women and men can internalize those lessons. Cassie shows what happens when you take society's conditioning to an extreme It is a cautionary tale, but at the same time, her portrayal invites a gentler view towards girls like her. Instead of just laughing at the crazy girl who got drunk and made a scene, Euphoria asks us to see the broken heart behind it. In conclusion, Cassie Howard's feminine journey is unique among the Euphoria ensemble because it is entirely painfully real to her. She is the only one who doesn't treat femininity as a costume, reaction, or power play. It is her identity, infused with all her hopes and traumas. In claiming that, she may have lost everything external: friendships, reputation, the boy, but she inadvertently claimed herself. By the end, she has nothing left to hide or lose. There's a twisted freedom in that state of nothing left to lose, where she can potentially rebuild on honest terms. Whether Cassie will ever redefine her sense of self beyond the feminine mystique is an open question for future episodes. But even as she is in season 2, Cassie forces a conversation about why femininity and the sense of embracing feeling, beauty and romance is still often devalued, even by those who claim to champion women. Cassie actually didn't lie to herself about what she wanted, and that fearless self-delusion, it's a paradox, makes her story compelling. In a way, Cassie won by being the most emotionally honest character in a show full of lies. Femininity can be performance, prison, or power. In Cassie's case, it was a bit of all, but above all, it was heartfelt. And maybe that's the takeaway. There's a human heart under all these concepts. If we extended a bit of grace to Cassie, we acknowledge that feminine yearning is not a weakness to deride, but a human experience to understand. Cassie's feelings were real, and feeling is not failure. In fact, it's the whole point of our existence. A lesson most of us will never learn, but in the face of someone like Cassie, who simply puts her feelings out there, we realize how much power lies in simply being who we really are. So what's wrong with making a scene? What's wrong with suffering because of your choices that were made trying to achieve something you really want? Nothing. We are so conditioned for control that we don't even realize when it keeps us from living. As messy as it looked, Cassie's pursuit of love was a form of reaching for happiness, something everyone in their own way can relate to. The challenge for Cassie and for anyone is not to lose oneself completely in that reach. Cassie did lose herself. Or did she finally find herself through the loss? Euphoria leaves that ambiguity on purpose. One thing is certain. Cassie Howard made us look at what it means to live your emotions without second guessing them. Something at least I was deeply impressed by. So, if you like this video, consider subscribing or at least leaving a comment and a like. It helps the channel a bunch. And if you're interested in Euphoria, maybe you have seen White Lotus Season 3 and might be surprised which other tragic figure surprisingly survives. Check out this video to find the answer. See you next time.